student engagement through active learning strategies like discussion, peer teaching, hands-on activities, anything that actively engaging the student significantly raises achievement levels. One of the most important keys is active participation. And there's 10,000 things that we can really do as teachers to make sure that students are actively engaging in the classroom. You have to be purposeful and planning the time for building relationship. Hey teachers, welcome to the Lead, Serve, Teach podcast, where we explore the intersection of leadership, education, and personal growth. I'm your host, D.Paul Miller, and I'm so glad you've joined me here for some powerful conversation and a little bit of real talk. This is episode 2 of our series, really looking at engagement in our classrooms. And well, again, it can be a bit of a struggle in today's world, really, what our students are able to engage with online, the different technology tools that they have, from iPads to their phones, to the computers, to what they're seeing on TVs. And it's more and more engaging, and it pulls them in. There's a psychology of marketing that's being utilized by businesses and entertainment world that are able to pull in students. And I hate to say it, but let's be honest, sometimes maybe what they're seeing in the classroom, well, it could be a bit boring in comparison. And so I think that we as educators, we have to become experts at engaging our students. Last week, we talked about the importance of starting with relationship. And that relationship, to me, is the great equalizer. It's that tool that really makes what's happening in the classroom maybe just more important than what's happening on TV, more important than maybe what's happening on that student's phone. That relationship is something they can't find on a TV show. When we can leverage that relationship in terms of engagement, it makes our lessons so much more powerful. It makes our instruction so much more effective. But sometimes we can make that mistake, I guess you could say. And I personally remember making that mistake in my classroom where I'd spent the time, purposefully decided I was going to build relationship with my students, work that into all of my classrooms, all of my lesson plans, had that moment, that extra 4 or 5 minutes that I would take to build relationships with students, whether it's one-on-one or maybe small groups, 2, 3, 4. Maybe it was just something I was doing whole class, but I always made sure every day I had that little bit of foundational relationship building in that lesson. So once I started doing that, I realized there was a second step that I needed to take. I was making a mistake every day of building the relationship. I had the students right here in the palm of my hand, and I was ready to start teaching that day. And I thought, man, they're all engaged. They're all ready. And then I would go into presenting the lesson. I would go into very quick lecture mode. And well, I found myself one day teaching a government lesson. And I'm teaching kind of like the difference between the two political parties here in the United States, the Democrats and Republicans. And as I'm going, I was so excited about it. I had a whole whiteboard of information and great stuff going on in my mind. And in the students' minds, well, I guess you could say we had a good relationship because they weren't totally disengaged. They were trying to hang with me, but just, you know what I'm talking about. If you've been an educator for any length of time, you know, you turn around and you see the glazed over look, I'm trying to stick with you here, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and the students are trying, but they're just disengaged with it a little bit. I guess you could call it maybe a passive engagement. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I was so excited about this lesson, so excited to teach this lesson, so excited to put all this stuff on the whiteboard and to be talking and lecturing about it. And I just thought the students would get so much from it. And it was very disheartening, a little bit of like confusion on my end of going, wow, what did I miss here? At the end of the day, passive learning equals disengagement. Research has shown is that students learn best when they are active participants in the learning. And that's the focus for today's episode 2, is designing our instruction, designing for active participation. Students learn best when they are actively doing the heavy lifting of learning, and the teacher's not lifting for them, not learning for them. They're engaging the student, making sure that the student reaches down and grabs that skill and starts using it, making sure that our students are active participants. So we've spent the time on building relationship. We've got their attention in reading, writing, thinking, and talking about the content, about the skills, about that lesson for today. This kind of relates back to John Hattie's visible learning from his 2009 meta-analysis. In that research, he found that student engagement through active learning strategies like discussion, peer teaching, hands-on activities, anything that actively engaging the student significantly raises achievement levels across the board, any grade level, you name it. This is one of the most important keys, is active participation. And there's 10,000 things that we can really do as teachers to make sure that students are actively engaging in the classroom, in the skill, in the learning, whatever it is for that day. You have to be purposeful in planning the time for building relationship, in taking an action to do that as the educator in the room, as the leader in the room. I believe it's also true for this active participation. I would venture to say most teachers love the area that they teach. They love math or they love social studies or whatever it may be. They're there and teaching it because they have a love for it. So it's very easy to fall into the lecture, the sage on the stage kind of mentality. I'm going to speak, you're going to be excited about it, and you're going to take notes on it, and you're going to learn this because, well, I'm excited about it. That actually is not what John Hattie found in his research. If you've been in education any length of time, you've probably read other books and other authors and other researchers that have found the same thing. It is this active engagement, taking it from the sage on the stage to the students being an active participant in the learning. That's when the magic happens. So I want to give you a practical application, a way that you can take it and move it into your class. And that's something simple thing called a think, pair, share. And you probably heard of this before. It's something that is so quick and easy to implement. And again, it's one of those things that I always like to say, put it in your tool belt so that you can pull it out as soon as you see students that are kind of disengaging, as soon as you feel like, uh-oh, I've been speaking for like more than a few minutes here, and I'm not sure if the students are keeping up with me as the teacher. A think, pair, share is just a moment where you have a good question and you ask this question, you give maybe 30 seconds of think time. I oftentimes will do a think, pair, share with a little bit of writing involved in there. I'll say, hey, I've got a question. I've been talking about this topic for a few moments. Maybe it is even a classroom discussion in some ways, but I want to make sure that every single student is thinking, writing, and then sharing. And so I do a think, pair, share with good question. Got to be a high level question about the topic we're discussing. Then you give 30 seconds to the students and make sure you're very purposeful about that 30 seconds for thinking. Oftentimes we ask a question, we expect that immediate answer. No, you got to give think time. Then give another 30 seconds to them and say, hey, write down some of your thoughts, write down some of your answers to the question, your opinions, whatever it may be. Just take 30 seconds to do that. So, what are we at in terms of the time we're taking to do a think, pair, share? We're in maybe a minute, minute and 15 seconds, depending on how long the question was that you initially asked. And now we're going to give 1 minute to pair up with a neighbor and share 30 seconds for each student to kind of share their thoughts, their answers, their opinions to the question, whatever it may be. A little over 2 minutes to do a think, pair, share that engages every single brain in the classroom. That is going to have good results. And then you can maybe stop then after that and have a whole class share out. Or there's many different ways that you can make sure that you're saying, hey, you got to share your neighbors' thoughts or opinions, or anybody want to share something that they learned from their neighbor. It's oftentimes good to have that little crossover to make sure that the students are listening and not just speaking, not bullying the conversations between the pairs of students. So it's amazing what happens when you do that, when you activate every learner and not just the vocal few that tend to happen in every class, but you're engaging every learner and allowing every learner to think, to write, to speak, to share. Man, what a difference that can make. I realized the mistake I'd made. I did not activate my learners. I did not get them involved and engaged in the thinking process. And so what I did was immediately changed that lesson. I said, the next time I give that lesson, I'm going to figure out how to engage my students in that process. So that's not me just sharing what I know up here, but actually getting them involved in the process. And so what I did was I actually changed it to where I presented a real world scenario to each of the students, and they worked in groups of 4. And I would give them a problem. Hey, we've got a problem in the United States, and it is this. Now, it's your job as a team of 4 to come up with a way. Well, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost time. It's going to have legislation involved with it. How are the states going to deal with it? And so I built this project basically for them to determine how they're going to raise funds, how they're going to fix this problem, what entities are they going to involve with the government. And then I allowed each of the groups to share out how they were going to fix this issue and what their ideas were. And then I was able to take some of their ideas and start relating it to how the 2 different political parties would solve that same issue based on their beliefs of how it should be done. And it was amazing how whenever I started with active participation, them thinking about what they should do, come working as a team, using some good collaborative processes within their groups to make sure that all of them are actively participating in it and then sharing it with the class. It's amazing what a huge difference that made when it came to the engagement of the students and the students understanding, really raising their achievement level in that course. because I started active participation and designing my lesson specifically for that engagement piece, that active participation. So I'll leave you with this. Learning isn't just a spectator sport. So this week, just try a simple think, pair, share, and maybe just keep that in your back pocket when you see students glazing over and you see them not engaging, when you realize for yourself that, ooh, I've been speaking 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes. I need to stop and do a think, pair, share. I need to do something that's really quick just to make sure that the students are allowed to practice the learning, to practice the skill, to work with another student, to read, write, think, and talk with another student, with the teacher, whatever it may be. Just ask that one question and give them the time to think, pair, share, and you will notice how participation quickly multiplies and expands in your classroom. I'm going to leave you right there. Make sure that you come back next episode for really taking it one step further into looking at relevance and purpose in our lesson, what impact that can make for our students as learners, even in this wild world that we live in, how we can engage them in the learning process. So remember, you're not just a teacher, you're a leader, you're a change maker. So keep striving, keep inspiring, and don't ever quit. I'm D.Paul Miller. I'll see you for the next episode.